Emotional detachment is not rejection of love or compassion, but a strategic protection of purpose, peace, and divine alignment in a world that constantly pulls on your spirit. Too often we mistake emotional detachment for coldness. We assume that when someone chooses not to react, they are uncaring. But what we fail to realize is that the discipline to step back emotionally is one of the greatest forms of wisdom and spiritual maturity. Detachment is not the absence of feeling, it is the presence of clarity. It is the power to feel deeply yet choose wisely. In a world that demands your attention, your reaction, your energy, and your validation at every moment, detachment is a divine boundary. We live in a time where emotional overstimulation is constant. People want immediate responses, they want your agreement, your availability, and your emotional investment, even when they haven't earned your trust or aligned with your values. The pressure to always be involved, to always care, and to always engage is a trap designed to keep you emotionally exhausted and spiritually distracted. But emotional detachment is a refusal to be baited. It's the wisdom to discern what deserves your energy and what does not. It is the strength to know when to hold peace instead of offering opinion. It's not that you don't care, it's that you care too much to waste your presence on things that threaten your purpose. You see, emotional detachment does not mean you're closed off. It means you're covered. Covered by peace, covered by discernment, covered by divine strategy. There are battles that are not worth fighting, and there are conversations that are not worth having. There are people who thrive off your emotional instability, people who only feel powerful when they can provoke a reaction from you. These individuals are not interested in truth or healing, they are interested in control. And when you choose emotional detachment, you strip them of their weapon. You take back your power not by fighting louder, but by standing still, by being unmoved. People will test your spirit, they will misinterpret your silence, they will accuse your peace of being pride. But do not explain, do not react, do not trade your alignment with God for acceptance by people. Sometimes detachment is the only way to hear heaven clearly. When you silence the noise of external expectations, you make room for divine instructions. God cannot fill a heart that is full of people's opinions. He cannot guide a soul that is tethered to constant emotional chaos. That is why detachment is not just emotional discipline, it is spiritual warfare. You are not called to fix everything. You are not assigned to everyone, and you are not responsible for how others perceive your peace. When you detach emotionally, you are saying to the world, I trust God more than I trust reactions. I choose stability over sympathy. I choose peace over performance. There are moments when the most powerful statement you can make is your absence. There are seasons where the only way to maintain your anointing is to walk away. Not because you're angry, but because you're aligned. Do not let guilt manipulate you into attachment. Emotional guilt is the enemy's favorite tool to keep you stuck in cycles God already freed you from. You don't owe anyone the version of yourself that is constantly emotionally drained. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to preserve your peace. You are allowed to evolve in silence. Emotional detachment is how you guard your growth. It is how you say no without explanation. It is how you love from a distance without compromising your destiny. Some people only love you when you are available to their dysfunction, and the moment you choose detachment, they call you disloyal. But don't let their noise confuse your knowing. You know why you had to pull back. You know what God revealed to you in the quiet. You know the cost of your calling, and you know that peace is not passive, it is powerful. The enemy thrives in emotional entanglements. He wants your spirit to be so tied up in unnecessary drama, fake loyalty, and toxic obligation that you miss divine timing. But when you detach, you disrupt his plan, you remove the bait, you walk away from the trap, and you walk back into your assignment. Not every battle is yours. Not every argument needs your input. Not every cry is your responsibility. Emotional detachment allows you to see with heaven's eyes. It removes the fog of emotional manipulation and reveals the motives of the heart. When you are detached, you discern clearly. You move strategically. You love deeply, but not foolishly. You serve freely, but not aimlessly. You become a vessel, not a victim. In a world that demands constant access to your emotions, detachment is an act of war against burnout. It is the shield you use to protect the oil God has placed on your life. Because make no mistake, there are people who want your oil but not your pain. People who want your wisdom but not your process. People who admire your strength but secretly plot your fall. And if you are emotionally entangled with them, you won't hear when God says leave. You won't move when God says shift. You won't see when God says watch. Detachment is how you obey without delay. It is how you protect your prophetic sensitivity. When you're always reacting emotionally, you become spiritually dull. But when you are detached, you hear God clearer. You feel His nudges, you follow His whispers, and most importantly, you move in His timing. Don't let the world shame you for guarding your peace. Don't let people guilt you into reattaching to dysfunction. You are not cold, you are chosen. You are not distant, you are disciplined. You are not unavailable, you are under assignment. There's a difference between being disconnected and being divinely detached. The disconnected person is bitter, closed, and unhealed, but the divinely detached person is discerning, wise, and protected. You are not building walls, you are establishing boundaries. And boundaries are not rejection, they are redirection. They protect your purpose, they preserve your anointing, they create the space for God to flow without interference. Let them talk. Let them mislabel you. Let them wonder why you don't show up anymore, why you don't answer, why you don't engage. It's not because you're arrogant. It's because you are assigned. You've seen what happens when you give too much of yourself to the wrong people. You've seen how distraction delays destiny. You've felt the drain of being emotionally available to people who have no intention of pouring back. And now you've chosen detachment, not out of pain, but out of purpose. Even Jesus detached. He withdrew to quiet places. He did not chase the crowd. He did not defend himself when falsely accused. He did not react to every attack. He moved in purpose, with peace, and with precision. If he modeled emotional detachment for the sake of divine focus, why do we resist it? Why do we feel guilty for following his example? The truth is, we've been conditioned to believe that love equals constant availability, that care equals endless sacrifice. But wisdom teaches us that true love honors boundaries. True love respects purpose. True love does not drain you. It partners with you. So detach from anything and anyone that disrupts your flow with God. Detach from the need to explain your peace. Detach from the urge to respond to everything, and detach from the pressure to be emotionally available when your spirit is being called higher. Your destiny depends on your discipline, and emotional detachment is a discipline. It is not something that always feels good, but it is something that always serves good. You may feel misunderstood, but you are not mistaken. You may feel isolated, but you are not alone. You are not heartless. You are healed. You are not cruel. You are called, and you are not distant. You are divinely aligned. Let them wonder, let them assume, let them be offended. You have decided that your peace is non-negotiable, that your purpose is too sacred to be sabotaged, that your energy is too precious to be wasted. You are walking in divine detachment, and that, my friend, is not weakness, it is wisdom, it is not avoidance, it is advancement, and it is not rejection, it is revelation. The world may never understand it, but heaven applauds it. Emotional detachment is the tool of the mature, the strategy of the focused, and the covering of the called. Guard your peace. Protect your purpose. Detach and let God lead. When you master detachment, you no longer allow others' chaos to disturb your clarity. You respond from wisdom, not wounds. You begin to live from a place of stillness that is not easily shaken by the noise of emotional manipulation. The chaos that once used to unsettle your soul no longer has the same authority over your mind. You begin to realize that people don't disturb you. Your attachment to how they treat you is what disturbs you. You take hold over what you see. When you sever that tie, you're not becoming indifferent. You are becoming clear. Clarity is the fruit of spiritual detachment. And clarity is what makes your response divine, not reactive. There was a time when every insult required a reply. When every slight pushed you into a spiral of overthinking, when every disagreement left you emotionally exhausted. But now, because you have learned detachment, you see it differently. You no longer respond to defend your pride, but to protect your peace. You no longer show up to prove you are right, but to stay right with God. This is the power of detachment. It gives you the upper hand, not through control, but through release. And that release is your freedom. When you no longer need to control outcomes or people, your spirit finally rests. And in that rest, God speaks. You hear him clearly when your emotions aren't loud. The enemy thrives in emotional noise. He tries to keep your mind cluttered with offenses, arguments, accusations, and confusion. But when you master detachment, you silence that noise. You begin to live above it. The arrows may still be thrown, but they don't penetrate like they used to because you've stopped catching them. You let them fall. You let them miss. You've grown beyond the need to catch every offense and carry every wound. Detachment teaches you that not everything deserves your energy. Some things only exist to test whether you've truly healed. Not every battle is sent to defeat you. Some are sent to reveal that you've outgrown your old reactions. The person you were a year ago would have been triggered, but the person you are now is trained. You've been trained through trials. You've been equipped through silence. And now wisdom speaks louder than your wounds. This is what makes spiritual detachment so powerful. It's not about becoming cold. It's about becoming controlled by the Spirit, not by emotion. You start to discern when someone is simply projecting, and you don't internalize it. You see when someone is manipulating, and you don't fall for it. You know when someone is provoking you, and you don't take the bait. Your calm begins to offend those who thrived on your chaos. But that's not your problem. Your peace is not a weapon. It's a witness. It's proof that you've let God handle what once handled you. When you respond from wisdom, not wounds, you begin to see people for who they are, not who your pain hoped they would be. Pain makes us cling, but wisdom allows us to release. You start to notice that some connections were only comfortable because you were broken, but once you heal, the dynamic shifts. You no longer laugh at what you used to tolerate. You no longer feel guilty for choosing peace. You no longer entertain what grieves your spirit. Why? Because you've mastered the art of detachment. And make no mistake, detachment is not always comfortable. Sometimes it feels like loneliness. Sometimes it feels like being misunderstood. Sometimes it feels like a constant battle between your heart and your discernment. But detachment isn't about comfort. It's about calling. It's about aligning yourself so closely with heaven that the pull of people's chaos no longer moves you out of divine position. You begin to understand that not everything is worthy of your proximity. Some things and some people are better loved from afar, not because they're evil, but because your peace is too expensive to be traded for familiarity. In this space of detachment, you stop trying to fix broken situations that God never told you to repair. You stop revisiting places that only offer emotional confusion. You stop trying to convince people of your worth. Your identity becomes rooted in heaven, not reactions. You no longer have to argue to prove your value. You carry it in your silence. The more you walk in detachment, the more you attract peace. The more peace you carry, the more uncomfortable you make chaos. And that's okay. Some will call you distant, let them. Some will call you arrogant, let them. Some will say you've changed, thank God you have. You were never meant to stay emotionally bound to things that kept you from clarity. That version of you, the one that over-explained, overreacted, overgave, is gone. And what replaced it is a person rooted in divine wisdom. You have discovered the power of response over reaction, the power of observing without engaging, the power of silence over screaming, and that power cannot be taken lightly. Wisdom does not always speak, it watches. It does not always reply, it reflects. And it does not always fight, it forgives. Not to let the offender off the hook, but to unhook yourself from the cycle of emotional bondage. That is what detachment offers, a key to walk out of rooms where your voice was never truly heard, a door to leave tables where you were always served pain and called it loyalty, an exit from cycles that made you a prisoner to people's perceptions. You begin to learn the beauty of the pause. When someone tries to trigger you and you pause instead of pounce. When you're provoked and you breathe instead of break. That pause is where detachment lives. That pause is where heaven downloads strategy. That pause is where peace grows. Don't rush past the pause. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. And wisdom will always lead you away from unnecessary battles. When your responses are no longer coming from unhealed wounds, you begin to reclaim time. Time once spent overanalyzing. Time once spent crying over people who never valued your heart. Time once spent proving yourself to those who only applauded your pain. That time becomes sacred. And that's when you start building your purpose, your vision, your calling, and your destiny. You are no longer tethered to emotional fire drills. You've moved beyond being someone's emotional firefighter. You've moved into being a kingdom builder. And this is the highest purpose of detachment, not just personal peace, but kingdom advancement. God cannot trust unstable vessels with stable assignments. So he takes you through detachment not to punish, but to prepare. He teaches you how to sit in a room with conflict and remain calm, how to hear lies about you and not flinch, how to be overlooked without becoming bitter, how to be betrayed and still stay focused. This is the refinement process. This is how gold is made, not in comfort, but in fire. Yet in the fire you do not burn, you're refined. You come out with clarity, with discernment, with strength that no longer needs to scream. And when you walk into rooms, your silence speaks volumes. People sense your authority, not because of how loud you are, but because of how settled you are. And that settledness, that stillness, that unshakable peace, that's the mark of divine detachment. You are no longer a slave to reactions. You are no longer driven by needing to be understood. You've realized that your mission is too great to be emotionally tangled. And that's not just growth. That's godly. God is raising people in this hour who are spiritually rooted and emotionally detached. Not to be unloving, but to be unstoppable. Because the only way to navigate this loud, chaotic, overstimulated world is with deep spiritual clarity. And that clarity only comes when you stop letting chaos speak louder than God. So remain detached. Not because you are bitter, not because you are afraid, but because you are focused, because your heart is fixed, because your assignment is calling, because peace is not just a desire, it's a decision. You have chosen peace. You have chosen purpose. You have chosen wisdom over wounds. And because of that, you will walk into places others break down in. You will stand where others fall. You will remain calm in storms that sink others. And not because you are strong, but because you are surrendered. Surrender to the process. Surrender to the pruning. Surrender to the silence. Surrender to the detachment. You are no longer reacting from pain. You are responding from purpose. And the world will wonder how you do it. They'll wonder how you stayed quiet when you could have clapped back, how you stayed peaceful when everything was falling apart, how you remained kind when people were cruel. And the answer will always be, I mastered detachment. I chose wisdom. I chose God. And when you choose God, everything else falls in line, because the enemy cannot trap a soul that refuses to react. He cannot bait a spirit that is settled, and he cannot defeat a person who has learned the art of detachment. So stay still, stay clear, stay wise, because the battle is not yours. It belongs to the Lord. And your only job is to remain in peace, respond from wisdom, and never again let someone else's chaos destroy your clarity. Would you like me to create a time-stamped SEO summary and hashtags for this 30-minute speech as well? God never called you to be emotionally enslaved to everything that demands your attention. Detachment is how you discern what's truly worth your energy. We live in a world of noise, constant movement, endless alerts and expectations. You wake up and before your feet touch the floor, your phone has already notified you of 10 different things pulling at your spirit. And if you don't guard your peace, this world will gladly rob it. Not all that calls for you deserves your response. Not every message deserves a reply. Not every crisis deserves your presence. And not every emotional outburst deserves your explanation. The reason so many are drained and worn out is because they haven't learned the spiritual discipline of detachment. They've confused being loving with being available. They've confused being kind with being always accessible. And while their heart may be pure, their boundaries are broken. The truth is, God gives you discernment, not just to see what's happening, but to choose what you should respond to. That's spiritual maturity, that's kingdom wisdom. Detachment is not the absence of care, it is the alignment of care with calling. You are not called to be emotionally entangled with everything that tugs at your heart. Some things are distractions dressed in duty. Some people will weaponize your empathy to keep you bound to their dysfunction. You'll find yourself drained not because you're weak, but because you're too loyal to things that no longer carry your assignment. And until you learn to detach from what drains, you'll never fully walk in the clarity that sustains. There are some seasons where your greatest warfare will be choosing what not to carry. Not every burden is yours. Not every fire is yours to put out. Some fires are meant to reveal that the person who lit it is addicted to chaos. And your response keeps the drama alive, but detachment silences that pattern. Detachment breaks the cycle. Detachment says, I see it, I feel it, but I will not be moved by it unless God tells me to act. Spiritual detachment is not apathy. It is authority. It means you stop being manipulated by urgency and start operating by divine instruction. Because urgency is often a tool of manipulation, people will manufacture urgency to control your attention. This has to be done now. If you don't fix this, no one will. If you really cared, you'd be here. No. If you truly care about your calling, you'll recognize when someone is trying to hijack your peace with counterfeit responsibility. You are not emotionally irresponsible because you say no. You are not less godly because you choose distance. Jesus himself walked away from crowds. He withdrew to quiet places. He didn't heal everyone in every city. He healed those the Father led him to. If Jesus operated with that level of discernment, why do you feel guilty when you do the same? Guilt is not confirmation of wrongdoing. Sometimes guilt is the enemy's way of manipulating your empathy. That's why detachment is protection, detachment is discernment, detachment is divine. And listen, people will get angry when you detach. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you've become cold, but you haven't become cold. You've become clear. Clear about your boundaries, clear about your peace, clear about what God has assigned to your spirit. And the moment you get clear, manipulative people lose control. because your detachment removes their access to your energy. And when people can't feed off your emotions anymore, they call you distant, but really you've just grown. Detachment is how you preserve your strength for what truly matters. You don't owe your energy to everything that's loud. Sometimes the loudest thing in your life is not your calling, but your distraction. And when you keep feeding your distractions, you delay your destiny. This is why the enemy loves emotional chaos. Because if he can keep your spirit constantly responding, constantly reacting, constantly explaining and justifying and defending, you'll never have the stillness to hear what God is really saying. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strength under submission. Silence is strategy when the Spirit is leading. God is raising up a generation that's not moved by applause or accusations, a people who are emotionally anchored, a people who are not tossed by every wave of manipulation or fear. They are anchored in the Spirit, and detachment is their anchor chain. It keeps them from drifting into toxic roles. It keeps them from enabling immature behaviors. It keeps them grounded in purpose, not performance. And let's be honest, some people only love you when you are emotionally entangled with them. When you detach, their true motives are exposed. They never loved you. They loved the version of you that was accessible to their chaos. But when you detach, they can't use you as their emotional crutch anymore. And they'll say you changed, and you have. You've grown, you've healed, you've matured. You've submitted your emotions to your assignment. This is what God wants for you. Not an emotionally enslaved version of yourself, but a focused, intentional, and peaceful version. One that knows what to carry and what to release. One that listens before reacting. One that prays before responding. One that walks in wisdom, not weariness. That is the fruit of spiritual detachment. You must understand, detachment is not rejection, it is redirection. When you detach from people, places, and patterns that drain your discernment, you're not being harsh, you're being holy. Holiness is separation, not separation for pride, but separation for purpose. Detachment is not disconnection from people. It is deeper connection to God's voice above people's demands. In this next season of your life, God is requiring emotional mastery. Not so you can be numb, but so you can be clear. Not so you can be distant, but so you can be divine in your responses. You will need to know when to walk away, when to stop explaining, when to keep silent, when to protect your peace, because your next level cannot afford your old distraction. So what do? You stay anchored. You stay prayerful. You stay observant. You stay discerning. You stop trying to prove your love through performance. You stop justifying your peace. You stop apologizing for protecting your emotional space, because the more you detach from the noise, the more you will hear the whisper of God. And His whisper is all you need to walk with confidence and clarity. The people who truly carry divine purpose in this world are not those who give in to every emotional tug. They are those who know how to remain rooted when everything around them is screaming for attention. They are those who respond from the Spirit, not their soul. And that only happens through detachment. So ask yourself today, where is my energy going? Who is draining me and calling it love? What am I tied to emotionally that God never called me to? What drama am I engaged in that distracts me from my destiny? What voices am I answering that God told me to walk away from? Your answers to those questions will unlock your freedom, your clarity, your focus, your strength. And when you truly embrace that, when you start protecting your peace without apology, you'll begin to realize that detachment is not the end of connection, it's the beginning of divine alignment. You are no longer being pulled in every direction. You are rooted, you are stable, you are secure, And now you can move with wisdom. You can speak with authority. You can love without being manipulated. You can serve without being drained. You can lead without losing yourself. That's the power of detachment. That's the strength of discernment. That's the fruit of emotional mastery. And it all begins when you stop feeling guilty for choosing peace over pressure.